Welcome, everybody, to Rico 12. I'm Justin B., your host, and a child of an all-powerful, perfectly loving God, and an addict living in the miracle of one day at a time recovery. What a beautiful and amazing life this is. Rico 12 is an open to all addictions and afflictions organization dedicated to exploring the common threads of the differing manifestations of alcoholism, sharing tools and offering hope from those walking a similar path. So whether your thing is alcohol, drugs, sex, gambling, food, whatever, you are home here. We gather from diverse backgrounds, faiths, and locations to learn from and support one another. Our speakers come from various fellowships and experiences, demonstrating the universal principles of recovery. Rico 12 is not allied or affiliated with any specific 12-step fellowship. A quick announcement, an exciting announcement for me. David G., Nikki M., and I are back together, resuming our recordings of the Big Book Roundtable, picking up at Chapter 8 to Wives. This last just yesterday, on Thursday, we released the first episode we've released in several months because our schedules have gotten back to where we can record again, and really grateful for that. There's already well over 100 episodes of that podcast going line by line through the Big Book. And we are now, like I said, in Chapter 8 to Wives, and we'll continue through the first 164 pages with this project. So go check it out. Rico 12 Big Book Roundtable. All right, now this is Rico 12 speaker meeting number 424. Thank you for joining us live or on the recording later. Today's speaker is Marty E. He's a first-time Rico 12 speaker, although he has been quite influential in my own recovery walk over the last couple of months, and I'm very grateful to him to have him here today. We're continuing our 12-week series on each of the 12 steps of recovery this week, and Marty will proceed with step 9 today. I look forward to diving into this conversation here in a few minutes, but first, a few quick things. Rico 12 does offer a variety of recovery resources. I mentioned the Roundtable. There's also Noodle It Out with Nikki M. And we got WhatsApp group and Facebook and Instagram and all that kind of stuff that I really stink at, but we're getting some social media help on that and grateful for that. To follow us, come check out Rico12.com, RECO12.com. and learn more about those things. We are also self-supporting, and your contributions help us continue this mission. For information on how to support us, I'll put information in the chat, in the show notes of the podcast, or at Rico12.com. You can do it there. Thank you this last week to Danae for your generous donation. Any support, both financially and by word of mouth, truly makes a difference in helping us share these messages of hope and recovery. Each week, we receive light and inspiration from our speakers. Their experience brings us hope, meaning, worth, and growth. Now, I'm going to welcome today's guest speaker, Marty E., give a little bit about him, and then I'll turn the floor over to him. Marty E. is from Anchorage, Alaska, and he came into the SA Fellowship in 2008 at the age of 37. Having fought and lost since 12 years old, he never knew there was an answer to his problem until a friend told him there was a recovery program for lust. He initially came in, attended meetings, didn't get a sponsor, didn't work the steps, and to his surprise, he didn't get sober. When he finally got a sponsor, worked the steps, and followed his suggestions, Marty had a spiritual awakening. That is the result of working the steps. He loves talking with newcomers, giving away his literature, and working with his sponsees. God has shown him how to build the fellowship he craved. Take it away, Marty. The floor is yours.
All right, thanks, Justin. Well, grateful to be able to be a part of this today. I'm going to set myself a timer because I need to. There we go. Wow, ninth step: made direct amends to such people wherever possible, whenever to do so would. Except when to do so would injure them or others. I know when I came in the program, this was one of those things I read. By the way, I was smarter than everybody else. I ordered all of the books and read them all before I showed up to my first meeting to make sure I knew what I was talking about. And I'll tell you now, you didn't want to hear what was coming out of my mouth. It was just gross, I think. I like the model of what it used to be like, what happened, what it's like now. What it used to be like. I grew up in a home where he who knew the most won, and that included it included mowing somebody over or harming somebody if that's what it took to make your point. And I remember as a kid, my mom saying, "Tell him you're sorry," or sitting me down on the bench with my brother and saying, "You can't go anywhere till you say you're sorry." So, okay, I'm sorry. And um, and then one day we were visiting my grandfather, and my mom said, "You tell him you're sorry," and he said, he in his booming voice said, "Sorry doesn't make it okay." And my mom about lost it. She was so upset, but there was a truth, even though he didn't really speak it in a way to be constructive. Um, it it made me aware of what we did as a family, but I didn't know anything else. We're always full of regret. I was always full of regret, but well, I said I'm sorry. Why are you still upset? Um, and it's funny. The Big Book talks about what it's like living with us as addicts. Starting off on page 82 of the Big Book. Um, I call us as addicts purveyors of chaos, and purveyor is somebody that sells it. They market it. They try to get it out into circulation, and so the alcoholic is like a tornado roaring his way through the lives of others. Hearts are broken, sweet relationships are dead, affections have been uprooted. Selfish and inconsiderate habits have kept the home in turmoil. We feel a man is unthinking when he says sobriety is enough. He's like the farmer who came up out of the cyclone cellar to find his home ruined. To his wife, he remarked, "Don't see anything the matter here, Ma. Ain't it grand the wind stopped blowing?" And if you jump down on the next page on 83, it says, "We must remember that 10 or 20 years of drunkenness would make a skeptic out of anyone." If you jump over to page 122 in the Big Book, and it's talking about the family afterwards. At the bottom of the page there, last full paragraph, it says, cessation of drinking is but the first step away from a highly strained abnormal condition. A doctor said to us, years of living with an alcoholic is almost sure to make any wife or child neurotic. The entire family is to some extent ill. So we're the crazy makers. We bring it, and we sell it, if you will. And you know, how did I ever get to the place of wanting to do a night step? Because coming through the door, uh, it was the kind of thing where I was like, yeah, I said I'm powerless over lust, over alcohol. Yeah, my life is pretty unmanageable. Maybe if I just tried harder, but certainly I've told all that I need to tell, and I've said sorry before, so I really don't need to go back to it. And so that's what it was like. Um, as you heard in my intro, it wasn't until I got a sponsor, started working the steps, that things started changing. And one of the first places that it changed for me was in the fourth step. My sponsor had me writing out the list of people, then the list of what the offense was or what I perceived the offense, right, real or imagined. Lots of imagined in that, and then you get over to the third and fourth columns and start seeing what was the right thing for me to do. Where was I wrong? And there's prayer work that he gave me that went along with that, and it was this tiny little phrase that went along with uh, this prayer of realization, is what he called it, which means to make real to me. So God, help me to realize this person is spiritually sick just like me. The little catchphrase is just like me, right? So every day when I'm praying through all these resentments and harms that are in my step work, I'm getting to see just like me. And boy, in the big book, if you want to refer to it that way, there's a story about someone who is forgiven a little bit and someone who's forgiven a lot, and it talks about how much we are able to love and forgive, I believe, as a result of that. And so, as a result of working my four steps, and really 1, 2, 3, 4 all together, boy, I was in tremendous need of forgiveness. Um, I needed to be forgiven, and there seemed to be no way to deal with it. Um, and step 9 seemed kind of inconsequential in the face of the gravity of where I'd come from. Um, a good friend of mine gave me this definition of forgiveness, and it stuck with me through all of my recovery. And he says, forgiveness is choosing to carry the weight of another's wrong without asking them to pay. And there's a model of that for me in the big book. And so, how do I do that? Well, first of all, 9 comes after 8, which comes after 7, which comes after 6, which comes after 5 and 4, right? So we see that the steps prepare us for the thing that we want to do here, the task we have ahead of us. And so I've just got some stories of different amends that I had to make over time. My sponsor's instruction was that a typical amend, and I'm going to say someone that's not family or close friend, was a maximum of 4 lines. And boy, that felt awful small because I really couldn't justify or soften the blow in 4 lines. But he said it wasn't because of me. He said it was because there's no guarantee the other person ever even wanted to see me or hear from me again. And so I was kind of offended by that, like they should want to hear from me. I'm here to make these platitudes, but turns out it's enough. And this first one. Well, I'll say this too. My family, they've lived with me for the 10 or 20 years we read about what the effects are in a family. Like, they deserve much more than the 4 line, and I'll talk about that here in a minute. But this when I was a teenager, I was out on a hunting trip in my home state, which isn't Alaska, but and I was hunting, and we were out there with a family friend, and I was breaking the rules. So at sunset, you're supposed to unload your firearm and pack it up and head in. You're done shooting. And as a teenager, I thought I could get away with just a little bit longer. I could still see pretty good, and I saw what I thought was an animal, and I pulled a trigger, and it turns out it was the family friend that we were hunting with. And so terrified, right? And ran over there, got him to the truck, get him back to where my dad and my brother were, and we're driving. End up shooting him in the thigh. Nearly severed the femoral artery, which, if you know much about that, if you sever that artery, it withdraws into the abdominal cavity and they bleed out without showing a drop outside. And so it had nearly severed that. My dad had me driving, and he was in the back administering first aid in the vehicle. And I wasn't driving fast enough. So we swapped places, and he had the friend hold his own direct pressure. Well, we got there, and the sheriff ends up meeting us at the police or at the hospital and stuff. And already my brain's been going 100 miles an hour, and I had the story concocted, and I lied about it, and said that I heard a shot and somebody else did it. And so I was actually very not okay at that point. I was having suicidal thoughts. I think I was distracted every day, and it wasn't until about 2 weeks later when this family friend of ours, his name was Dean, when his brother was going through the hunting gear and they found a bullet and they pulled the bullet and they checked it, and they were pretty sure that it came from my gun because I had a spent casing in my rifle. They even asked me about it. Why do you got a spent casing? And I lied about that. I shot at a squirrel, and um, my dad came and picked me up at school, and all he said was, "Disappointed in you, son." And like I was a mess. Um, you know, the it blew up a relationship for my dad with this friend. It blew up the relationship with my dad with his friend, who is this guy's mother. Um, and and I ended up losing my hunting rights in Georgia for a while, where it happened. Um, so fast forward all this time, and I've never spoken to this man since it happened, and it was terrifying. And I was, my head had made up all sorts of things, that were going to happen, and he's going to shoot me, he's going to yell and scream, he's going to do all of this, and but you know what? I'd made it all the way through this, through my fifth step, told my sponsor all about this thing that had happened, six, seven, eight, which is interesting. Eight, as far as my effort goes, is just to become willing. Um, After I made the list, which I made the list as doing other step work, but my only job is to become willing. And God provided the opportunity, and I was headed back home to for a visit, and so talking to my sponsor, how am I going to do this? And like, well, you're going to find out where he's at. I called my dad to get the guy's phone number, and my dad's like, "Why are you doing that? You don't need to do that," And he was getting afraid about it, and I was like, "Well, I have to." And so he gets me a phone number and an address. And so I go over to this address, and I haven't seen this guy in 30 years, 35 years actually. And so I show up at the door, and I swear all my fears are coming true. This really big guy shows up wearing nothing but coveralls, and there's gun safes stacked all around in the room there, and it's kind of an oddball house, and I'm like, oh man. He invites me in, and kind of squeezing through the door because there's lots of stuff piled up there, um, I'm just kind of I make my little four sentence statement, which these statements there's parts of it that are required. Like, first of all, you know, they may not even remember me either. So who am I? I'm a part of a spiritual fellowship that requires me to make amends for my wrongs. And then I state what I did. When I was a kid, I shot you and then lied about it, and uh, that was wrong. So an affirmation of that I was guilty, right? That what I had done was not in accordance with our moral or legal code of our society, and then asked him how to make it right, and he just kind of waves me, no, 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 you're talking to the wrong guy. That's my brother. I was like, ah, so all right. So then he's like, well, I'll print you out a map so you can get to where he's at. And here's his phone number so you can actually reach him instead of me. And and his brother was just the nicest guy. And his brother starts telling me about some of the aftermath of what had happened in their family, which broke relationship. Wasn't broken relationship between my dad, his friend, and Dean's mother, but also Dean's mother with Dean's mother with his brother. This is the impact of my wrong, um, and so basically, he tells me how to get to his brother, call him. He's like, yeah, come on over. Yeah, I remember who you are, and come on over. I'm at my office right now. So I'm like, oh no, I got to do this at his office. I'm like, oh. And so I walk into his office, and he closes the door. And so I basically now a little bit more confidently and less jumbled, since I got to rehearse on his brother, get to make this amend and say, how can I make it right? And he looks at me and he says, Marty, you've been carrying that around all this time? And I just broke down in tears. I was like, I never talked to you. I never saw you. I just, what I did was wrong. And he says, you're forgiven. And, you know, this wrong that I had done had affected me all the way into my adulthood, with my own boys who I've taught to hunt and be safe with firearms. It's affected me with friends because I might demonstrate a little bit of high energy when it comes to still having a weapon loaded or something like that after dark. And uh, but you know it was just such an amazing release, to go in there and to say I was wrong and experience the grace from this man that, and he told me more about what had happened. And in the end, he's like, well, I'm a motorcycle rider. I'm going to come up and see you up there in Alaska. And he hasn't, I'm like, dude, you got a place to stay. I'll take you around, show you around, whatever, and he hasn't made the call yet, but, that's, part of my making it, like just to be there. I really can't make it right is the hardest thing to see about that all. Um, so that was one that, not too long ago here. Another is, uh, is with the family, and, making amends to family. All this craziness, this neuroticism that I've caused, this harm, this, gaslighting, if you will, or, it's like, Andy Grand, look, there's nothing wrong here. Um, the my wife and I actually had help in our amends, and I was to sit there. The instructions for me were to sit there and hear what she was saying and not formulate a defense while she was saying it, which was terribly hard. And it was hard enough that I had to have a piece of paper and I was taking notes. And at first she was like, why are you writing? I was like, because I want to remember, because I want to know, because she was basically telling me about the hurt around my disease, the shame, the anger, the sadness, all of this stuff. And so, um, to make an amends, really, I have to know what it is I'm making an amend for, because otherwise I'm back to oh, I'm sorry, aren't we okay now? If I can't recognize what was done, and if I can't acknowledge what was done, then it really doesn't feel like an amend to the other person. But the one in particular is with my mom. My mom. I was a uh, I was someone who experienced a surrogate relationship with my mother, which they call, covert sexual abuse. Um, Someone that's experiencing relational connection, that belongs to someone else. So she would share things with me that belonged to my father. She would say things that were way too detailed, and so basically what that left me with as a kid, the way I would describe it is like this icky feeling. Like when mom would want to hug, I'd be like, try to get away. But the resentment that grew out of that, like I left home as soon as I could, and part of the shame around it was that my brother took that place, and he was connected with that in that same way. But that resentment for me was really so full of rage and anger, and basically it was like, taking your dog who leaves a mess on the floor and rubbing their nose in it, which, I wanted my mom to see what she had done, to hear what she had done. And the experience happened in a hospital where she was actually getting back surgery, and cut you open on one side, close you up, flip you over, and do the other side the next day. And because of the medication, she wasn't really her normal self, and I would say she became almost childlike. And for me, I was in in the middle of writing 4-step stuff, and you couldn't fight with this person. Like, they're like a child. But like, why are we doing this? What's, like, just unguarded, right? And so I saw that, like, it was like I was hanging on to this railroad tie, full of splinters, creosote. It's smelly, it's hot, and I'm hanging on to it and holding it. Like, look, see what you did, see what you've done, see what you're responsible for. And which, even in that, is kind of crazy. But wanting her to be responsible for what I was feeling. And and I had to pray and ask God to help me to forgive, not just to forgive, but to let go. And the prayer I came up with is that, and it's in a sticky in the back of my big book with a little picture that I drew, and I've left it there ever since. But that I release the right to prove my hurt. I release the right to have you pay for what you did. And in doing so, I imagine myself on this lake with this creosote timber and just letting it go into the depths of the water and letting it sink out of sight. And what it did was it freed me to be able to forgive, that God would be the one of justice, that God would be the one that would provide the outcome. And in making my amends, my mom's not very healthy, either physically or spiritually, and so she started to, it was a little bit mind bending, but that's okay. I took care of my side of the street, and she said, "I forgive you," and so I'll take it to it's page 100 in the big book here. And this is kind of a outline of what happens as we, walk with a sponsor through these steps, through the process. Because you know what? My best thinking got me where I was at. My best thinking got me all wadded up with all these resentments. I think I had like 15 pages of them. And that's college ruled paper. And so, first full paragraph on page 100 says, "Both you and the new man must walk day by day in the path of spiritual progress. If you persist, remarkable things will happen. When we look back, we realize that the things which came to us when we put ourselves in God's hands were better than anything we could have planned. Follow the dictates of a higher power, and you presently live in a new and wonderful world, no matter what your present circumstances." And the process that he explains there is, first of all, surrender. We cannot do this without surrender, because if I'm still in charge, I'm going to get the same results. I surrender. I look to God for his outcomes. If I'm in charge of the outcome, my batting average is 0. His average is 1,000. Say batting 1,000, like 100%. And then the realization. So it's amazing that when part of the reason I love working with sponsees is that I get to rehash the path that I've been on, and rehash the gifts that I've received. I get to see the freedom that I've experienced from working the steps, in particular, getting to 9, and being free. And I don't have to live that way anymore. And what a boon. I tell guys, what a boon. I get to say I'm sorry, and it's okay. So yeah, for that I'll pass. Thanks.
Got questions about addiction, recovery, or just life in general? Let's noodle it out together. Grab your big book, a pen, a highlighter, and a notepad, and join Nikki M and me, Justin B, on Rico 12 Noodle It Out with Nikki M. Each episode, we take real-life questions, ours, yours, and those from the recovery community, and dig deep into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous to find real, practical solutions. So, if you're ready to do the work and apply the solution, tune in to Noodle It Out with Nikki M, streaming now on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you so much, Marty. That was fantastic. I've gotten a list of a whole bunch of questions I've got for you. And I want to remind our live audience, if you have a question for Marty, please type it in the chat. If you want to remain anonymous, in other words, if you don't want me to read your first name, just say anonymous, please, or send me a direct message, and I'll ask that question anonymously. But I'd like to start off here. I mean, there are so many good things here, but I'll start off towards the end of this, Marty. You know, you said, as you're making amends, your mom said, "I forgive you." Did you ever have an opportunity or the situation where you made an amends and the person said, okay, great, I don't forgive you, but thank you, or, you know, whatever, and you moved on without that? And how do you deal with those types of situations?
I haven't had that. And I don't know why. Maybe I just hadn't got to one that I don't know of that's that way. Yeah. So how would I deal with that? Well, first of all, I got to feel it. You know, that's part of and this is just, I guess maybe this is just an idea on it, but that just adds to the gravity of realizing the harm that I did, that it has affected this person so deeply that they don't even want to see me. And at that point, again, the outcome is really up to God because I can't change it. So beyond that, I'm just speculating, like I said, because I haven't had that happen yet. So.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I like the speculation there. I don't know this, but maybe a sponsee of yours has had that situation and you've given that type of feedback or something. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on it also. Next thing comes from Bill from our live audience, and I actually wrote the same thing, so I want to dive into it. He loves the quote, "Forgiveness is carrying the weight of another without asking them to pay." So dive into that just a little bit further and clarify that quote if that's not quite complete. And then I have a follow-up question about it.
Yeah, so the quote is choosing to carry the weight of another's wrong without asking them to pay. You know, it's funny. It came as a result of my wife in her program coming to me and making amends. That was kind of it kind of added into this because her sponsor said, "Don't go make an amend if you're not done." Says, because when you make an amend, you're also giving up the right to bring it up again, to bring it back and weaponize it. And you know, the harm I did myself in carrying around the weight of what my mom did and asking her to pay for it was I was stuck with all the creosote and splinters. Like she wasn't. Like she couldn't see it. Like spiritually, she couldn't see what she did. And she wasn't, and probably never will. But, you know, I was harming myself and carrying that around, trying to show it, you know, put it in her face and make her realize it. So, you know, it doesn't mean that I'm a victim. It doesn't mean that if there was a crime that maybe there's not a pursuit of justice there. That's a man, that every one of those is so specific that, you know, that's really a work with your sponsor and you know, and you know, attorneys are part of our resources also. You know, especially if it's something that, you know, you're needing to make amends for. I actually had an attorney that I spoke to before I went and made this amends to a friend and that I shot, and he was kind of taken aback, and he basically gave an hour of his time afterward because he wanted to hear how it went. And so he was blown away at, that one, that we would do something like that, and two, that it would turn out that way. But that's the miracle of what happens between two people when somebody says, I was wrong. It wasn't okay what I did.
Yeah. So I love that. And a follow up on that quote, forgiveness is choosing to carry the weight of another's wrong without asking them to pay. Does that burden ever get too heavy from carrying the forgiveness, saying, you know what, I've forgiven you, but do you ever feel that burden, or how do you let that burden go? Because you're still, according to this quote, I'm carrying this around, but I'm not expecting any payment for it. How do we not get overwhelmed by that burden?
Well, see, I have a higher power who takes that burden for me. And when I let him, have the results, when I let him determine the outcome, then I don't have to carry it. It's funny. There's when I'm working with sponsees, everybody's seen Chronicles of Narnia, probably Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And there's this part of the story where they are, where the young king is traveling with the lion, and they're traveling through the night, and he's tired, and he's kind of hanging on Aslan, the lion, right? And he's kind of complaining and griping. Oh, it's so tired, Finally, Aslan says, "Get on my back. I'll carry you." And so he gets on his back, and he wakes to the sunrise. And as he gets off of Aslan, he looks back and sees this path that they had just come across, which was basically this little trail on the side of a precipitous cliff. And the whole time, Aslan had walked the edge while he walked on the uphill side. And then eventually, where it became so narrow that it was almost impassable, that's when he was carried by Aslan. And so, in this, it's just this idea of like a 2-year-old that looks up at his dad, and everybody doesn't have this relationship with their dad. So whoever this person is for you, right? But for me, it's my higher power, and I just look up, and 2-year-old, if he gets tired, he doesn't have trouble saying I'm tired. He doesn't have trouble saying I want to be carried. So I kind of imagine just looking up to my higher power and say, "Up, daddy," and be carried. Just those 2 words, like the "be carried." It's like I don't have to carry it, like, because he's offered to carry it for me. I've seen a couple.
Yeah, we got a couple more questions. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so let me get to this one. This one's from Georgina. Georgina says, please repeat the I release the right prayer so we can get that down. And then there's a couple other questions after that. So tell us about that one here again.
Yeah, okay. So that one's just, you said it's on my little sticky in the back of my book here. But this is it. So I release the right to prove my hurt. I release the right to have you pay for what you did.
Hey, Spearheads, if you're looking to dive deeper into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous with people who live the solution, then you won't want to miss RICO 12 Big Book Roundtable. Join David G., Nikki M., and me, the moderator Justin B., 3 recovered addicts from multiple fellowships, as we break down the big book line by line. In each 30-minute episode, we share our experience, strength, and hope in a real, raw, and practical roundtable discussion. So, if you are ready to learn and apply what you learn, tune in to RICO 12 Big Book Roundtable on your favorite podcast platform. Yeah, it's beautiful. I love that. And I was making notes of that also. Next question with Georgina, she really appreciates the emphasis on forgiveness in this step. Could you also share any about any living amends with your mom. Is the relationship
Mm.
healed or improved, or is it a work in progress? Yeah. So direct amends, living amends, indirect amends. Talk to us about
Right.
living amends in that process.
So living amends, you know, my mother is in her late 70s, early 80s. Uh, she's not well physically. She's not well. She's isolated by her. A lot of it's her choices. Um, but I'm in relationship with her to try to provide for her care here at end of life. The resentful side would just be, you know, resentment is about amputating, right? Like it's just like I'm going to cut this person off. Um, the living amends is I talk with her, I call her on a regular basis now. I used to try to stay away, like it was like avoid her at all costs. Um, now, lest I sound like I got it all figured out, my relationship with my dad is still a wreck, and I don't have any communication with him, and that's pretty painful. Um, you know, Still don't see resolution in that one, but in that one also, um, I made my amends with him also, and but I wasn't following sponsor instructions when I did that. And so it's just that one hasn't improved. So the living amends is with in particular with my mother is phone calls. I help her manage some financial stuff. She's we try to include her, like, in different events, family stuff. And really it's as far as she's willing to go, but as far as she's unwilling to relate emotionally is where kind of the relationship comes to a stall, right? It's kind of in her court that way. So what I say, all my relationships are a work in progress, even my best ones. So
Mm.
I don't know if that totally answers it there, but yeah.
Is very helpful. Yes, thank you. And I want to dive into this one, the amends you made with your wife. You said, you know what, your assignment was to sit and listen to her until she was done and take notes and remember those things.
Mhm.
From our live audience, Bill says that he says this: I agonized about making amends to my wife because the last thing I wanted to do was hurt her more. In the end, I asked her what she wanted. I loved her response. I am not interested in knowing what you did. I'm more concerned with what you plan to do. It let me focus on my 6th and 7th steps to let God change me. And anyway, so talk to me about how you approached your wife to do that and make that not a safe space, but a space where she was willing to make that happen. And what are your thoughts on this comment here from Bill?
Yeah. Well, yeah. My wife, and this is from outside help. We received outside help um, to share, what my disease looked like. Some people would call it a disclosure. Some people that are purists from the big book, or they run like the earth, like the sky is falling when they hear about something like this. Um, I've heard of lots of bad experiences with this. And Beyond that, I keep my opinion to myself around that. But what we had was really good help, and the idea is that it's a 30,000 foot view of my disease. My wife is not made to hear details about all of my acting out, all of my the stuff that goes on between my ears doesn't belong to anybody but me, my fellows, and my sponsor. My spouse is not made to endure that, and so with that, the disclosure was such that she understood by the end of it that I was a sick man and in need of help. Um, when she got to come, and this was kind of in response to this is like the response to the disclosure, okay, where she talks about what she experienced in that. The It was pretty unfiltered. It was hard to sit there. It was hard to hear. The hardest thing was hearing how much it hurt her and being powerless to make it okay. Because I can't make it okay because I can't go back and erase history, right? Like those things have happened, and so we've been married 31 years. We're coming up on 32 years here, and it wasn't until I'll tell this, it wasn't until 6 year point. Um, we were sitting in the bedroom getting ready for bed. And I'm just sitting on the side of the bed, and she's standing at the counter, and she turns around to me kind of abruptly. I was like, "Uh-oh, what happened? Something changed." She looks at me and she says, "I'm not scared of you anymore." And I was like, "What?" She's like, "I'm not scared of you anymore. I used to be scared of you all the time, and I'm not scared of you." And so, like, I was just like, "Oh my gosh, like, this is a gift. This is God's work." Like, I can't claim credit for this. Like, I try to live different. I'm still making mistakes. I still make, well, I'm not at one amend every day with her anymore. So I'm glad for that. but early on, it was like, "You're right. I was wrong." And so many times it was how I would speak to her, not what I said, but how I spoke to her. Um, Sometimes it was, emotional bigness, that was doing the damage. Um, but when I hear about it, now I'm aware of it. I can't be unaware of it, right? I took the pill, right? Like in the Matrix. Yeah. So I'm beyond the point of pretending like it doesn't exist. And I have to face it then. And when I do it again, and she's gotten much better at not just corking it up. She comes right out and says it, and I get to own it right there. That's part of our 10th step, that we live in. Um, the, you know, at the beginning, there was always, and if you imagine a timeline, there was always I would do the thing, whatever it was, and then, at the beginning, it was almost 30 years after the fact that I came to the realization of what I did, you know. And in recovery, those two get closer and closer together until one day the recognition gets in front of the do. And I surrender. God, I'm powerless over this. Let's say I'm driving home from work, and there's something that my wife, texted me something during the day, and I catch myself having this argument with her as I'm driving home. Well, it is when you talk to somebody who's not really there. That's a psychiatric term, and it's crazy. And so I was like, "God, I surrender the right to have a conversation with her without her being here." And so I have to wait till I get home, and I don't have to make it up to what it's going to be like before I get there. I get to just get there and be in the moment and experience her, because most of the time what she texted me was just a passing thought in her mind, and I took it and I balled it all up, and next thing you know, I'm carrying 2 creosote logs. As I walk in the door and my gun's loaded and trigger's already been pulled. So, um, so yeah, so that's I don't know, I guess I kind of deviated from the question there, but
No, but you said something there that I think is really powerful. Early on, it was 30 years from the incident to the all right, I'm trying to make amends here, and it gets closer and closer as you're working your recovery until the recognition gets in front of the do. And I think that's a
yeah.
really powerful phrase and concept. So, and I think that only happens by practicing these principles in all of our affairs, right? Does that make
Hmm.
sense?
Absolutely, yeah. It works at work for me too. I'm in a very human interaction intensive environment with my job, and if you're not aware of my body language, my actions, my words, like I can create a safety, literally an unsafe environment that somebody's going to get hurt or harmed.
Mm.
And I'll add this in too. Knowing that there's a power differential um, in a relationship is important too. because if I'm a boss and I make a mistake, if I go have my employee sit in a chair while I stand next to them, there's an emotional, spiritual differential there too, right? Same thing with my kids. My kids, our kids are someone who are by birth, in a deferential position until they're adults, right? And so for my kids, a lot of times, if I was going to make an amend to them or talk to them, or, you know, uh, this was part of making amends with family, but I tell guys, like, what has it been like for you to be with me? And a lot of times I have to sit down. I would sit down on the floor, have them on the sofa or in a chair or somewhere comfy, and I would sit on the floor in front of them so that 'cause I'm a big guy anyways. I have a loud voice that carries a long ways. But to put myself on the floor below them and speak to them takes away uh, some of that apprehension that the person might have in telling the truth. So
Hey, Rico 12 Spearheads. If our recovery resources have helped you, please consider a donation. Your financial support, as well as your word of mouth support, keeps Rico 12 running and reaching the man who is still sick. Donate today at rico12.com/support or check the show notes for PayPal and Venmo links. Every contribution helps carry the message. Thanks for being a Rico 12 Spearhead. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for walking through that. All right, we've got an anonymous question here about a real life situation. I'd like to run it by you. This person says, first, thanks, Marty. I appreciate you sharing on the amends process and for your honesty. I was recently approached by a fellow who wanted to make an amends to me. They asked me how I would like to receive the amends, and I said I was open to a video call and that I would like to clear the air. I gave a date toward the end of April when I would be free. The fellow came back to me with 2 messages asking me why there had been a delay and whether they could just send a voice note instead, as they wanted to proceed with their step. I'm unsure how to proceed with this person, given my own understanding of the amends. Would love to hear your thoughts. So what are your thoughts on that, Marty?
oh man. So if I'm understanding it correctly, uh, the anonymous he said that the person called them or contacted them um, and wanted to make an amend to them, and they said, "I'm available here for a video call," and a person came back with alternate dates and times. Is that or a voice
Yeah,
note?
basically just saying, can't we do this quicker? And can I just send you a voice note instead of a video call?
Yeah, well, um, that's a question. Yeah, my first question is, what'd your sponsor say? Because I don't want to triangulate here. And a lot of times, if I don't like the answer, I'll go shopping for other answers that I prefer. That said, if your sponsor's not giving you any direction on it, I would say, is there a hardness in my own heart towards this person that is demanding to go by my schedule? Um, if I'm not suffering right now and they are, I might consider going, okay, I can be flexible. If I'm available to be flexible, can I? If not, what's the reason behind it? And that's my own investigation inside, I think. Um, but I don't really have an answer. This so it also looks like we're assessing the other person's amends process. And so if it's not your amends process, then let them follow if their sponsor suggested that they make it a voice note instead of a video call. I don't know what that is, or I don't know what's happened there in that background. But if we're grading their amends process because it's somebody else in the 12 step, then that's probably my own work right there.
No, that's good. And thanks for the self-reflection, inviting to self-reflection there. We don't know all the ins and outs, but I love how you said, you know what, let's look at this and do some self-reflection and see where I am here rather than where they are. And I think that's helpful for me too, because sometimes when somebody wants to, do something, whether it be an amends or, what I see hold me hostage, I want to bring something out quicker or whatever. So I get it completely. All right. Well, we're going to get ready to wrap this up. I do have one more question for you before that, though. And I think this could be helpful for a lot of people. It's been helpful for me to hear this. So let's say that I have had a victory in recovery where and we'll talk about sex addiction, where I was able to walk away from a temptation and that was very triggering and really threw me off. Is that something that I should go and talk to my wife about and share, hey, this victory that I had? Okay, now tell me why not. Let's go through this. What is appropriate for my wife? What is appropriate for my sponsor?
So this is my understanding of it. You're offering your wife a fifth of whiskey. If you're to go and try and tell her about that. Now, that's also part of our spouse's recovery in the SA fellowship is they don't ignore the facts anymore. They don't ignore the truth. But if I'm sober, I'm in recovery, this is my daily walk. My temptations do not belong to my wife. My temptations belong to my brothers. And the funny thing is I can say the same thing to my buddy that I might say to my wife, and one, I would get a totally different response, and I would have a totally different experience. Some people have agreements with an agreement using their counselor or their therapist and their wife. They're doing couples counseling that if you relapse, you need to tell me in X amount of time. Okay, that's kind of a relational covenant. Tell the truth. It's important. Talking about the stuff like up here, there's no, unless I did something, nothing happened. This isn't a program of freedom from temptation. It's a freedom from having to act on it, which Harvey told me a long time ago. And the gift is that I get to walk away from the temptation. Now, my own recovery wise, this idea of temptation was an amazing eye opening, and Roy Kay talks about it in some of his outside literature. He talks about it's like we have this idea that somehow we should go through life without temptations. And somebody who says they don't have any temptations just isn't aware of what they're struggling with. So we all have temptations, whatever sort it might be. But, I don't take my wife, particularly the ones that are sexual in nature. I don't take those to my wife. Those go to my brothers. Those go to my sponsor. And yeah, those are victories. Those are worth celebrating too, because, that's not the way it used to go. For temptation was just a foregone conclusion when I started, and so it was just going to happen. It was just a matter of when. And so, so
that's beautiful. Thank you for verbalizing that. I love how you verbalized that. All right. Do you have any final thoughts, final words of wisdom before we close this up?
Yeah, I already kind of hinted at it, but if something I said is not in agreement with your sponsor's right.
Yes, that's always a hard one for me to remember to say when I'm talking to somebody who calls me for feedback on something.
Right, and if you don't have a sponsor, get a sponsor.
Yes, very good. Well, thank you so much, Marty. That was a fantastic Rico 12 speaker meeting for everybody here, and I really appreciate it. As I close this out, please, everybody here, come join us in our WhatsApp community. If you have additional questions that we weren't able to get to, let's post it in the community. Let's all talk it out in that community. You can join it. I put the link in the chat. You can also email me at rico12pod@gmail.com to get in there. Come back next week as we continue our 12-week series on each of the 12 steps with step 10. Now, next week's going to be fun. Lisa S., who is the host of our Afro-Euro Rico 12 weekly speaker meeting, will actually be the host, and I'm going to be the one that presents step 10. And I'm both nervous and excited about this, as I'm generally way more comfortable being the host or the interviewer than being the speaker or the interviewee. So it should be exciting. You won't want to miss it. Maybe you will want to miss it, but come back. We'd love to have you here. Marty's now going to launch us off into the rest of our day with the Lord's Prayer.
All right. I love this. Just in the heart of the ninth step, we're asking God to forgive us the way that we forgive others. So, boy, the pressure's on, right? Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen.
Amen,
all
amen.
Right.
Everybody remember, there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find God now.
Find him now.
Thank you, Marty.
Let's trudge this road of happy destiny together. Work it. You are worth it.
It ain't about the body, it ain't about the skin. It's the lie that whisper you'll be whole if you give in. It's the high before the hollow, the click before the fall. It's the ache that never satisfies no matter what you saw. They told me it was natural, just boys being boys, but I was choking down poison dressed up like a choice. And now I'm calling it by name, no more hiding in the fog. It ain't just porn I'm fighting, it's the God I made of want. Porn of problem, lust is the thief, selling us heaven and leaving us grief. I wanted to love, but I learned how to crave. Now I'm digging through ashes and calling it brave. She ain't an object and I ain't a king. Porn is the problem, not just a thing. And what about her? Yeah, the other side. The girl who learned early she was worth what she supplied. She didn't want to be seen, she wanted to be wanted. Now she's starved for attention and Instagram haunted. It's the hunger to be lusted, mistaken for love. And both sides end up empty, beneath and above. Two mirrors cracked, reflecting shame, chasing validation instead of names. Porn is the problem, it sells a fake cure, turns humans to products, makes touch feel impure. We thought we were free, but we're slaves in disguise, scrolling through bodies with dead in our eyes. This ain't just a screen, it's a spiritual war. Porn is the problem, and we can't ignore. I want more than a moment behind a glassy screen. I want covenant, not dopamine. She ain't here for my escape. She's the temple, not the bait. Porn is the problem, but truth is the light. I'm learning to see her with heaven in sight. I'm laying down idols, I'm turning from shame. And love don't come cheap, it comes with a name. I ain't cured, but I'm done with the game. Porn is the problem, and I'm not the same. I used to worship lust, now I'm learning how to love.